some strange noises and who knows what. Back on Sports 225, and where we last left you was at the Boston Marathon, and Ray Castle was at the finish line, which, wow. Okay, so
Yes.
now, I mean, I just got to throw it off to you and tell me what happened at that point.
Well, it was about, you said earlier, it was a beautiful day, in the 50s.
And that's a fantastic area there on Boylston Street.
I had never been to Boston.
Oh.
It was, I mean, if you've never been to Boston,
Yeah.
you've got to go. I mean, it was a.
Well, I can tell you, I've
phenomenal.
stumbled home from that area a couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
times when I've stayed in that part of town.
So beautiful
Yeah.
area. It was just a fantastic experience just to be, to see the city, and it doesn't, you see pictures and TV, but it doesn't do it justice. But we were there. We'd had, I think, about the 4 hours into it, and they had staggering. So I'd never worked a marathon or a racing event that large. So when they make the turn onto Copley, you're seeing this near Copley Square.
Right.
You see this wave of head just continuous, and it's like they're flooding in and.
Right.
And
so let me just, for scene setting sake, because the leaders come in just over 2 hours.
yes, and the wheelchair racers as well.
And then over the course of the next couple hours, which is
Yes.
kind of like everything was going smoothly, people were coming in, and
Yeah.
then you start getting to the much more average runners and people who might be in more need of medical attention in
Yes.
theory, right?
I mean, they're coming
Right.
across, and they're obviously we have in that whole area of everyone. Our instructions were, okay, this is your area. You don't move past the finish line. I mean, if we're even our area where we were, we have back. This is where we move back and forth. So if someone comes across the finish line, we make sure they don't fall, they don't hit the ground. So we are, they're obviously we're seeing them come across. You're looking at multiple, every couple of seconds. You may have 2 or 3.
So
that
somebody
may-
looks okay, you leave them be, and then you keep focusing.
and we still walk
right.
with them. They're
Gotcha.
wobbly,
Yeah.
and we still walk with them, or they may see signs of neurological dysfunction that is common for endurance athletes or doing an endurance. So they may have their cognitive function. They may not appear. Their consciousness may not be intact, or other signs. So
Right.
we had 1 or 2 that we walked with. More so, I'm walking back. I said, "Let's go and walk with you." So I would hand them off to another person down the line, and I'd go right back up to the front or near the finish line. So about an 8 to 10 meter area we would work. So if they fell, we had wheelchairs. We'd get them right off the area and keep moving. So actually, it was a lull. They had time starts. They had the stagger start. So if you look on the video, it was about a minute or 2 where it was just really low. All of a sudden,
When the bombs went off.
Yes,
And
it
where
is-
where were you at that time?
if you look at the media bridge, there's a wedge underneath, and we have water bottles, other things there. And I was probably somewhere around that media bridge. And for the day, I was on the opposite side of the street, covering that half of the street where the wedge is. So around the front of that wedge. So it ends up being, I guess, about maybe 10 meters or so from the start, where the finish
Right.
line. You see the
Yeah,
big
yeah.
finish, and there's it's in that area. So
So when
Give
the
or
bomb
take.
the first one went off, then how close were you?
about the same area. So
30 feet.
well,
35
I mean,
feet.
from there, but I mean, it went up.
Yeah.
I guess the explosion was, I guess, maybe been about 30 meters or so. I guess hard to tell from the video, but I guess in pictures about 30 meters, I guess, or 40, or maybe 30 to 50 meters. I don't know from or where it was
Right.
from the finish line itself. So
Yeah, yeah.
give or take 50, too darn close. So
Yeah.
for comfort. So
What goes through your mind at first, and did you realize?
it goes on. The sound. It sounded like the ROTC. You go to football games. ROTC. It's a really
When they shoot that cannon off
yes,
in the end zone.
It is just like it was just really loud. And first initial was that you don't think it's. They didn't tell us about this, and so you see I look and see the plume of smoke up. And keep in mind, athletes are still coming in, so we're trying to. You see this, but you see, okay, what's over there? Trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stay on target with what's happening. So
Yeah.
see the plume of smoke, and all of a sudden I look down, and there are folks on the ground.
Wow.
So we see 1 or 2 runners, and it's just like, okay, this is really what's you don't want to think it's that. And then a couple of seconds, the next one went off, and at that one it was we're taught from a medical and emergency personnel, we're taught you do not go in, you don't want to risk your own danger in going into an area. So most part probably just still. I'm looked to the left. I'm thinking, okay, it's over here. It's going to happen over in the grandstand area. That's my initial reaction. And I remember looking back at one of the co-captains of the area Larry Venus, who's the head athletic trainer at Boston University, he was close to me, and we don't even call what we exchange words. I mean, we looked and it's like, okay, then we just a sense of calm for a second, like we got to go, and we ran forward. So it was about a minute or so, I guess that occurred. So it was a lot to process. Yeah. One, my wife Catherine, I had seen her a couple hours beforehand, and they had come into the city, and I had actually told her, why don't you go around south past the other medical tents, come up near on Boyston. Yeah. Where and I told us you can walk up and down, and actually where the bomb explosions had been.
Right, because I would imagine at that point, number one, the medical part of you is, okay, they're injured people, something bad has happened, I've got to help them. But you're worried about your wife, where is she? And then you've got those 3 student trainers who are your responsibility as well. I imagine your head was like going crazy.
They were behind me, so it's just if it's forward, what's happening? I mean, they're in an area. I knew that for a couple seconds they're safe, but or didn't really, I saw one of our students, I saw him, I recall seeing him briefly, once we were in the middle of everything. Mm-hmm. So I ran up about, I guess it was where the main area was, mm-hmm. and trying to get through the scaffolding. And so, everybody's on it. So the main personnel there you have 4 physicians, and you have about 50 or so athletic trainers and athletic training students. That's the crux of the medical personnel at that area. So if you see a red hat or a white jacket, those were athletic trainers. So if you look at in the video or still images, I went in and I have a little small medical pack I always carry any event. So I had the medical EMS medical shears, and got up to the fence. There's a wood fence, and it's like we just couldn't get through it. You're trying to get through it's a wood picket fence. Behind the scaffolding. So we got through the part of the scaffolding, someone else was in front of me, so got there, and I got my shears, cut the shears down, and I see it just kind of flow away, and then walk right up, and you walk into another world. It's just something that's hard to, then it's really when everything went into really hyperdrive. I mean, part of that is really, I feel everything was in hyperdrive. So
in your brain.
Oh, I think we're trying to recall everything. It goes so fast.
And let me, for a reset, because if you just happen to be tuning in and you're hearing this whole story, this is Ray Castle, and he's a professor of kinesiology who was at LSU, who was at the Boston Marathon with 3 student trainers, and we're talking about what happened after the bombs went off. You're prepared for almost everything, but usually it's a blown knee. Somebody has a heart attack, you're the guy you want to have around, that kind of thing. But something like this, you just can't prepare for even in your mind.
Right. I mean, we're taught to handle, it could be anything from an amputation, and we're taught to handle any types of trauma there are. And when you walk in, you see, I don't have to go into details with every, you can see, I walk in, and the first thing I just realized, and looking back at the images and some of the video, I recall what I see is I'm used to being around. I have everybody, a big medical group around us for that time, and all of a sudden, we have physicians that have a special bib on. Mm-hmm. Athletic trainers, we have a red hat and white jacket. So you walk in here and there's nobody there. I mean, it's just. I know people are behind and coming in, but right. Before that was.
So you're one of the very few first medical responders.
Yeah, and looking at the pictures, I mean, image I saw probably the first 3 or 4 medical personnel to any of the victims at bomb site 1. So the hard part is what we're taught to triage, and that became instinctive. But the lay people, husbands, girlfriends, boyfriends, they were there doing some initial things already. The first victim I walked in up to, or didn't walk, but I moved into, was a lady who had, the husband already had a belt tourniquet and was putting a second one on. And at that point, my triage mode is I need to do a quick body assessment. She had extensive lower leg trauma, and I'm showing him how to do femoral artery pressure on both legs. Wow. And just try to maintain calm. We're coming. I knew we had tons of medical support coming, and I had to move to the next person and trying to see who we can get out of that area, because after the one area, there's just a pile of people that are there, and they're still they're still conscious, they're moving, but we're trying to get into them. And by the time I got 2 or 3, the fire and police and general population had pulled the the scaffolding back so they could get out to the street. And then, everybody comes in, then, provided care for 3 or 4, getting them into wheelchairs and whatnot. And then I became an assistive role. So we had enough people there, and what do you need? Equipment, supplies, help in splinting, et cetera.
Wow. I mean, it's got me gripping just sitting here talking to you. So hold that thought. We got to take a break. Ray Castle is with me. He's an associate professor of kinesiology at LSU, telling us about his experience at the Boston Marathon. Later on in the show, Jacques Doucet from WAFB will join me, but we'll be back for another segment with Ray. I'm Lee Feinswag. You're watching Sports 225.